Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 with FightIQ with Jesse Sidhu. I'm your host, Jesse. After a little bit of a layoff, there's no UFC last week, so I just took a break and didn't record an episode. But this week, I want to go over my results from the previous Batista versus Oliveira card, which was my best of the year so far, and then give you my recommendations or what I think is going to happen for Strickland versus Fluffy. So, won't waste too much time. I'm actually up 1.32 units from the Batista Oliveira card. I hit the Batista money line. I did miss Batista by decision. I hit Horiguchi money line, missed Horiguchi fight will not go by decision. Ended up getting the Kuniev money line, which was actually my best bet of the night. I actually got most of my units from that. I got 1.42 units off that. Missed Ola's Jacquez by KO. I was at least right on the fight prediction. I didn't get the method of victory, which, with him being such a heavy favorite, it's it a miss is a miss. I did get Basharat money line and Jacobe money line. So nice little cashing on 5 out of 8 bets. So not bad. And then honestly, I'm pretty proud of my predictions. Of the 13 fights on that card, I was 11-2. So pretty good, and year to date so far, I'm up 4.12 units, not including any of the long shot parlays. And then if you want to include the long shot parlays, which I'm just kind of throwing those out for fun, I'm not really kind of adding them to my bankroll. I'm still up 2.62 units because I just put half a unit on for each one. So honestly, I'm running about 60%. Cashed out, cash rate on my bets, which, is running pretty hot. If I end the year around like 52, 53%, I'm beating the book, which is pretty good. My goal is to maintain the 60 or a little bit better. So, if you're not reaching for a good goal, what's the point of doing it? So I'm gonna kind of maintain where I'm going. So, not bad so far. A nice little recap. Three fights so far of the year, not even close to being done, but pretty good start. So off to Strickland versus Fluffy fight night in Houston. So, excuse me. This is actually a pretty reasonable card for a fight night. It has some exciting fights, and especially kind of fleshed out more towards earlier this week and last week with some last minute changes and last minute substitutions. So let's get to it. So I always like to start with the main event. So for me, Strickland versus Fluffy. This is going to be a fun fight because I think it's very different stylistically. Fluffy is a very pressure-heavy fighter. He went cardio-based, wants to control it and uses the cage very well. So it's fun to watch him use that variable. Where Strickland's just, a striker with very, very underrated takedown defense. Currently, his takedown defense rating is pretty unreal, honestly. It's about, what is it? His takedown defense is 76%, dude, which is crazy for someone who's stands like this in the freaking Philly shell half the time. So that's that. So, basically this fight boils down to very simply two things. Is Strickland going to control the fight with the way he wants to fight, slow and then steady build up? Or will Fluffy, who comes out fast, be able to put the pressure on? And then, another correlated part is, can Strickland stuff the takedowns? Good news for Strickland to a little bit is, looking at the stats, Fluffy's takedown accuracy isn't great. He's about 49, under a little bit 50% of takedowns being landed off of that. So, that's a good sign for Strickland better. So for me, what it boils down to, Strickland's a dog at plus 220. So for me, with that being said, I think between this fight, I think it could go either way, honestly. They're both quality fighters. I think Strickland just has fought a higher quality opponents and losses of DDP, and then he's always surprised us. I actually want to take the odds on him, and then actually correlated with that is there's a couple nice little props that I think will be good value to pick on which is Anthony Hernandez under 6.5 takedowns at minus 115. I like that a lot. I'm going to put 1 unit on that. And then also a little bit of a hedge, but I also like this fight just going the distance, so I'm going to put 1 unit on. No matter what, I think like if Strickland wins, he's not going to really knock out Hernandez. And Strickland doesn't really get knocked out too often other than Alex Pereira, and then Fluffy doesn't have Pereira-like knockouts, so I don't see it going to the distance. I mean, I don't see Fluffy finishing it, so that's what I'm going with, I think, for this main event. Then co-main event is good guy Geoff Neal, who I feel like has been in the UFC for ages, versus Uros Medic. So this is going to be a nice little southpaw close stance fight. And, Geoff Neal coming off like a pretty brutal KO loss to Carlos Prates, who I think just, it's Carlos Prates, like, I was kind of on a comeback, and he's shown that, like, he's made up for his losses. So I think that was just like a good loss. Like, it's a good loss to have, if you can say anything is a good loss. Then he beat Dos Anjos, but Dos Anjos was kind of on the twilight of his career. And then he's lost to Ian Gary and Shavkat. So it's tough. Like, looking at it, he's beaten who he's supposed to beat, and he's lost to who we expect him to lose to. And then, looking at with that being said, looking at Medic, he has not really fought the caliber opponents that Neal has fought. And honestly, I just don't think they're both strikers. And I think Neal's the more complete striker, honestly, if I'm going to be there. And it's nice because Neal's is very lead hand dominant, or lead hand heavy. I don't want to say dominant in his fights against Southpaw. So I think he just has more comfortability fighting that close stance. I think that's, something we have to take into consideration. And the other thing that really stands out is the KO loss that Medic had versus Soriano, who's going to be on the undercard of this fight. So, even though Medic's on a 2-fight win streak and Neal has beaten a late career Dos Anjos and then lost to Prates is 1-4. I actually think I'm going to go with the vet on this one, even though it sucks that he is the favorite. So odds wise, it's a tough bet, but I think I'm going to take the minus 192 and just go with Geoff Neal on that one. Then the third fight of the fight card is Costa versus fan favorite Dan Ige. This was a tough one. It hurts. Dan Ige is just fun to watch, and he is a dog, dude. He fights last minute, and it's great to look at his fights where, dude, he either KOs his opponent or loses by decision. So, he's not getting knocked out, and he always puts on a show, which, you got to respect. And it's wild because if you go back to his fights, looking back, he hasn't lost. Not lost. He hasn't, since 2021, he's either won by KO or lost by decision. So I think you can go for this fight 2 ways. One, to get better odds, you can, if you think Costa is going to win, you go Costa by decision, because I don't think Ige is getting knocked out. Or if you think Ige is going to win, you get juicier odds about, right now DraftKings about plus 400, and taking Ige by decision. Just watching a couple of Costa's last fights, I think he's just on the come up, and I think he is going to be able to be a good quality opponent. I think Ige is going to be a good fight for him. Even though Costa hasn't fought the same quality Ige has, I think Costa has a level of fighting with it that he can do it. So for me personally, I'm putting this bet on Costa at minus by decision, and I'm okay losing it. I'm going to put 1 unit on it, minus 145. I'm going to take that. So the fourth fight of the main card is Spivac versus Delija. Cool thing about Delija, he's from Mirko Krokop's gym, so back down in Croatia. So it's gonna be fun, a little bit throwback to old school MMA fans. Krokop was a beast to watch and just fun back in the Pride fight days and all that. So this one's an interesting fight to break down. Both heavyweights, so it's gonna be a slugfest. They've fought the same opponents actually, and won and lost both. Spivac has beaten Tabeiro by sub, lost to Almeida and Cortez Acosta by last 3 fights. So he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights. And then Delija is also relatively new to the UFC, but is a PFL vet as well. He is 1-1 in the UFC. Beat Tibera by KO, lost to Cortez Acosta by KO. So, it kind of boils down to who's going to be a little bit more durable and who's going to do this. And the cool thing with Delija is he either wins by KO or loses by KO. He's 2-2 if you go back to a little bit of his PFL fights in the last 4. And then Spivac, loses by KO, lost by decision. So he lost against Costa a little better, made a decision fight. But that loss to Almeida is just I can't get over that after that Almeida fight the other week previously this year. So, and he lost to Gon. So he's fought in quality opponents. And he is the dog, but I think Delija gets it done. And I like the odds at just -122. So not a huge favorite. So I like getting a little bit of action there. And then now off to the 4th fight of the main card. And in my fight, I think low-key going to be the best fight of the main card is Jacobe Smith versus Josiah Harrell. So a little bit of background on this one. Josiah Harrell took this fight 7 days notice, 10 days notice, week, a little bit over maybe. But the cool thing about Josiah is he has a very cool background. He fights out of Ohio. And he was going to fight in the UFC against JDM a little bit early, a couple years back, but during his medicals, they found out that he had a rare brain disease. So had to take care of that, slowly but surely recovering, being cleared by medicals to be able to fight in certain states. And finally is come back and looked great. And cool thing is he fights out of Columbus, and one of his mentors, training partners, is Matt Brown, who, KO King. So he, I think, is more dangerous than people are going to give him credit for, in my opinion. I think, Ohio boys, they're tough. They're like Pittsburgh, PA boys. We know how to brawl. They know how to wrestle. That, he has a little bit of everything. And I think he's a very good total MMA fighter. And honestly, he finishes fights. So, and then, Jacobe Smith, super good wrestler, deserves all the accolades and is very good, was a well-touted prospect. So for me, there's 2 things that I'm going to do with this fight that I really like. One, I don't think this fight's going to go the distance, and we can get at -170, so I'm doing that for sure. Because I don't think either one's going to let this go to the judges. It's going to go one way or another. But because I think this fight can go either way, I'm a guy that takes the odds. I'm going to take Josiah Harrell at +260. So that's where I'm going to do it for 1 unit. And it's just I think they're both quality fighters. I just like the story, the story of Josiah. He's went through this adversity. I think he's going to be a good UFC fighter, and he's going to fight for the UFC in, give or take. Doesn't matter what happens to this fight. He's going to be there, and he's had some nice, fun finishes. Fought in the LFA, Ohio Combat League. So, done a little bit of everything. That's why I think it's just going to be a very good fight, and my favorite fight of the evening, for sure. And then the last fight of the main card is Zach Reese versus Michel Pereira. So this one's a tough one, man. Pereira is just not looked great in his last 3 fights. He's 0-3, hasn't done well. And it's also, you add on the fact that you lost them. I just don't see it. He's lost to Fluffy, lost to Dauskas, lost to Magnomedov, not great. Then, he was on a 3-fight, 4-fight win streak, so it's tough. I just don't know if you really, what Pereira are we going to see? While, Zach Reese, coming off, he hasn't fought the same quality opponents, I think, that Pereira's had, but he's done what he needed to. One did not count. One he got DQ'd, but it's like he beat McVeigh and beat Todorovic. I'm thinking like, I like the plus odds in this. I just don't, we don't know what Pereira we're gonna get. I think Zach Reese, gets it done, and it'll be a fun fight because one thing is they're both strikers and Pereira puts on a show, but I just don't. I think he's just gonna gas himself out, and then Zach Reese is just gonna get the win. I don't see either. I don't see it going to. I don't see Zach Reese finishing. Pereira could finish, but it's tough. I don't think he finishes Zach Reese. Zach Reese, pretty tough guy too. So that is the main card for Fight Night. And then let's go down to the prelims. So on the prelims, last fight of the prelim is I'm going to butcher this 100%. Njokuani versus Carlos Leal. This one's going to be interesting. Fight Carlos. They're both like UFC vets. Njokuani is coming off a loss to Matthews. But then he was on a 3-fight win streak. 3-1's pretty good. I don't always like give too much credit to just like the most recent fight. I think you got to use a couple of them just because they may fight only 4 or 5 times a year max. So I kind of like to use the averages. And then Carlos Leal is 2-2, but one was an LFA fight, and then he's 1-2 in the UFC. So this fight to me, both of them is going to be striking heavy. I like Njokuani has like the reach advantage, and it being mostly like a toss up. Like I don't see one is extremely better than the other. It's not like a mismatch of like a top 5 fighter in the division versus like someone outside the rankings. I have to go with the odds, and for some reason, I'm guessing the book is just getting more bets on Leal for some reason because they have Leal as the favorite. So I like taking the odds on Njoku. Or not Njoku, dude. I'm thinking of football right there. Njokuani. He is roughly right now. Oh, plus 120. Yeah. I'm taking Njokuani at plus 120 pretty easily. And then next fight on the prelims is Ode Osborne versus Alden Idros. Idros is relative new from the Contender Series coming up. It's his second fight in the UFC. He came from the Contender Series from Kazakhstan, trains out of there. Is 0-1 in the UFC, did lose last year in August. Ode Osborne, it's kind of on a rough patch. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights in the UFC, dating back to like 2023. 2 flyweights. It's tough because like Osborne has fought the higher caliber opponents, but has lost to them. Lost to Ursig. He did beat Garul, which is, not a nobody. He's also on this card. So, I mean, looking at it and then seeing the toss-up and how relatively new Idris is to the UFC, for me, with this fight, because it's so close, I think you just got to take the odds and go with Osborne. For me, that's what I'm personally going to go with. Next fight of the night is Alden Coria versus Luis Garul. This one, another flyweight fight, so it's going to be pretty much action-packed. That's a nice thing about these flyweights. They put it all on and they just put on a good show. Garul is 0-2 in the UFC in his last 2. Came up from the Contender Series, 0-2, lost to Osborne and lost to Aguila. And then Coria is 1 fight in the UFC, but he's 1-0, beat Costa. And he's came from Fury Fighting. So, like, they're both relatively well tested in a lot of the good regional promotions, both of them. And they both have, so they're both out of Fury Fighting. They've both been challenged pretty well with that being said, just like looking at it and looking at their styles, I actually do like Correa. I think he's just a better fighter, and it sucks because he is getting heavy odds as the favorite, is minus 375. It's a tough pill to swallow, so I am going to pick that. And I was looking at, nice thing is, like, they both both finished fights. I was looking at fight going the distance, so it is no, and at minus 105. So I am doing one bet on that as well for this fight. I think both guys, like, I could see them like just getting this fight. There was a small run where Garul did win by unanimous decisions, but then there was previous wins by KO, technical submission, one split decision win. So I just don't see this fight going the distance though usually. So between the both and the style of fighting. So on that one, I'm going to, like I said, go Correa money line, 1 unit, and this fight not going the distance, minus 105. Next fight on the card prelims is Nora Cornolle versus Jocelyn Edwards. This is a rematch of a previous fight that Cornolle won. And, this is a little bit earlier in Edwards' career. She's went on a 3-fight win streak after 2 losses. After this loss, she lost again and then went on that. So I think in this rematch, Edwards actually does get it done. But the odds are pretty bad at minus 340. I don't think Edwards is actually going to knock Cornolle out. Cornolle is pretty tough. She's lost decisions and won by finishes a little bit. And then the last fight did go to decision versus Edwards, which was unanimously won by her. I think this fight goes the distance and you get much more palpable odds at minus 145. So I am going with Edwards on that one by decision. Then the next 2 fights is Brahmaja versus Soriano. This one's going to be a fun fight to watch. Soriano fights out of Extreme Couture, which is like their 3rd or 4th fighter on this card. So, they're going to be well prepared for this, I think, with that being said. And big thing to me that points out is Soriano had a very good KO win versus Medic. He's on a 3-fight UFC win streak. He's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Brahmaja is also 3-fight win streak. He's actually 4-1 in his last 5 fights. I am going to go with Soriano to win. And I like it because it's minus 142. And then I want to see what currently fight going the distance. Yeah, fight to going the distance, no, is at minus 235. So, that's not that. That's tough because it's like Brahmajic has won like by sub and KO in his last 5 fights and lost by decision, but 1 KO, 3 sub. And Soriano has won decision KO, and lost by KO and lost by sub. So it's a tough one. I just don't think that those odds are too high for me to pick that. So I just like, as much as I like these kind of like method victory things, sometimes it gets you a little bit better odds on a fight and gets you a different angle. I am just going to stick with just straight money line, Soriano, minus 142. Next, sneaky fun fight is Phil Rowe, the wily vet, versus John Paul, butcher his last name, Labosniani. Interesting thing with like John Paul, he used to train with Brian Ortega and out there, and then he just recently coming off a Contender Series win last year. This is his first UFC fight. He fought an LFA. Relatively young. I think it's gonna be a fight. It's interesting though because like he's lost in some of these regional things, and then he's won some good victories. I think it's just like him being a favorite is just not good to me as like a betting man looking at stats, and like it's not like John Paul's going to beat Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe is a dog, and he's a vet. He's had some weak losses, but he's had some wins too. And I think he's going to be a good caliber coming. This is going to be fun no matter what test for John Paul. I think this is going to be a good thing. But for me and my money, I think I'm going to put one unit on Phil Rowe. I think he's just going to be able to throw some stuff out there that John Paul's not used to. And it's not like John Paul had a Gable Stevenson type run right now at the regional level where he's just smashing all his opponents round one, just finishing it. He's not really doing that much in that kind of sense. So it's not like he's this can't miss prospect. So I am taking the odds on Phil Rowe. I just don't think, I don't think Phil Rowe loses, but if he does, it's a good thing to put in my note, and everyone should note this, where I think, hey, Phil Rowe might be, on his late stage of his career. He is 35, but, I don't think that's past his prime yet, but that's something to be aware of in future fights. So if he does get booked later this year. And then these next two things, I want to preface this because I know this fight's going to come, this episode is recorded a little bit later than usual. So I'm going to end it at Phil Rowe just because I think by the time it comes out, it will go live, because I think the fight is going to be, by the time this is released, the Juliana Miller Carly Judas fight is going to be. So one thing I am going to put on, I'm not going to make an official bet or anything just in case timing wise, because I wanted to be authentic with my pick, is going to be Jordan Levitt versus Yadier del Valle. This one's an interesting fight. Young guy from Cuba, relatively, he's been killing it. Del Valle, as 2-0 in the UFC, came off a Contender Series win and 2 first-round subs. So that is impressive versus Jordan Levitt, who's, lost to Patty Pimblett and Chase Hooper, beating the dudes he's supposed to beat. So he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights, and technically 3-2 in his last 4 fights. There was a little bit of a layoff between Hooper and his most recent fight, but he did fight in 2025. So that, I think I'm going to go with the young prospect in Del Valle, and I think he gets it done. It does suck because he is just a heavy favorite at minus 376. One thing you can do to potentially get value is take the fight will not go the distance at minus 235. But yeah, no, that is my picks for this card. I do apologize for the late release. I just had some things going on, but quick rundown of my, I'm going to do a long shot parlay. So that one's going to be nice and easy. I am going to pick, we'll start with Strickland, Geoff Neal, Costa, Delija, Josiah Harrell, Zach Reese, Duvall, Phil Rowe, Soriano, Edwards, Correa, Osborne, and Njokuani. So that is my parlay pick, and then that is also my fight predictions as well, guys. So those are the guys I think that's going to do that. And of course, I will link my Google Sheet so you guys can follow along at my results. And yeah, no, that's it for today. I'll catch you guys next week for the next card. Peace.